Hey guys, this is Downphoenix, and I decided to check out a top 10 list because I've never done anything like that before, and I wanted to do a top 10 list on my favorite indie games of all time. I mean, there are a ton of great indie games out there, and it's really hard to choose, so it took me a long time to figure out what those games are. And you know what? That list could always change. You never know. If you ask me the same question tomorrow, what are my top 10 favorite indie games? Some of these answers might possibly change. But I'm pretty confident that these games will, at least for now, stand to be my favorites. And actually, number 10 is one that I've recently done a review for, and that game is called Town of Salem. This game is an excellent multiplayer mystery game where you use cunning and wits in order to best your opponents in the game. You have various skills with your classes that you play as, and you use those skills as well as conversation with other players in order to succeed. Basically, you're either playing as a townie or a town member, and you want, of course, to stop the opposing forces. That would be the mafia, the serial killer, and so on. Or, of course, you can play as one of those, and your objective, obviously, is to cause havoc and to get everybody killed and eventually be the last one standing. Town of Salem is a really fun game, and I highly recommend it. It is completely free to play, and you can play it on PC right now, and I believe they're also doing a mobile beta on the tablets for Android and iOS, so don't forget to check that out, and don't forget to check out the review in the description below. Number 9 on this list is a game that really took me by surprise when I played it. It was just so mind-blowing how well the aesthetics were in the game and just how well thought out the level design was. And that was a game that I actually got for free, which made it even sweeter because it's not actually a free game. And that game is Apotheon. This is an indie game that came out free on PlayStation Plus back in, I believe, February of 2015. And I really need to get around to finishing it. Obviously, because how could I put it on my top 10 list and never even beat it? But the game just blew me away with how well it was produced. I mean, the visuals are just fantastic. They look like Greek hieroglyphics or whatever. The hieroglyphics, I believe, is Egyptians, but it's got that aesthetic that is just pure and perfect for the era. The music and the soundtrack is just amazing. And, I mean, I just really enjoy the level designs and the story. This is definitely a game that I highly recommend you check out. And number 8 on the list is a mind-blowing space game called FTL. This was a Kickstarter darling that just blew me away when I first played it. This game is the quintessential Star Trek experience, in my opinion. It's not obviously anything to do with Star Trek, but this game is just so well thought out. You actually feel like you're a starship captain, that you're, giving out your orders and managing everything in your quest, of course, to remain victorious and not get your ship blown up or get your crew killed. This game is just fantastic in all regards. And I definitely recommend this game. I mean, you can check this out on PC as well as Android and iPhone, so I highly recommend that. Now we've got number 7. Number 7 is the only sports title on this list, and honestly, I'm not a big sports guy, but this was a game that I was just addicted to for like weeks at a time, and that game is Rocket League. This was another one that I got for free on PlayStation Plus. I believe it was around July of 2015. And this game is just one of the best multiplayer games I've ever played. And I've never been a fan of esports. That's a topic for another time, but this is definitely a game that if I was to ever watch any kind of esports tournaments or leagues, this would be the game that I would want to watch because it just has that perfect atmosphere for a sports title. It has nice, fast matches. It is a very highly skill-based game. It takes a lot of learning, but at the same time, it is such an easy game to play. And it's just a fun time with your friends, and I highly recommend Rocket League. Now I've got number 6 on the list here, And number 6 is actually a really special game to me, and that is Retro City Rampage. Retro City Rampage, this is, by the way, the PC MS-DOS port of it, which is amazing. It's one of only 1,000 copies in the world. But Retro City Rampage is a game where essentially it's kind of like a top-down Grand Theft Auto, like kind of the classic Grand Theft Auto games. However, this game does an excellent job of giving you a full-on nostalgic 8-bit feel. Interestingly enough, this game actually started as an NES port of Grand Theft Auto 3 a very long time ago. Retro City Rampage nails it completely in the aesthetics department and the referential humor. Not to mention it has some excellent gameplay that doesn't go stale very fast. And it's just a game that I hold dear, honestly. You know, this is a game that I will definitely play through the years to come. Number 5 barely edged it out. And the only reason why it did is because of the awesome replayability of this game. Otherwise, it's a very excellent game, and that game is Rogue Legacy. Rogue Legacy is a roguelike Castlevania Symphony of the Night-like game. And this game is just fantastic, just like you'd expect. There's tons of monsters, treasure to find, as well as a persistent leveling, which is very dissimilar to a lot of roguelike games. On top of that, Rogue Legacy has a really neat genealogy system. Once your character dies, your traits are passed on to the next character, and you get a bit of a choice on what kind of character that you want to play. You get different classes and all kinds of other neat things like that. Rogue Legacy is a roguelike game unlike any other, but it's not my favorite, which we're going to get to in just a little bit. Number 4 is a game that is actually kind of weird to have on this list, because when I played it for the very first time, I didn't like it very much, but now it is, in my opinion, the most atmospheric game I've ever played. You know, it's just the most engrossing in terms of the visuals and the story and the soundtrack as far as the indie game goes, and that game has to be Hotline Miami. This was a game that when I first played it, I was really surprised at how fast it played, and I thought that the game design was honestly a little bit broken, but I really gave it a fair shot. You know, I decided to stick with it, and I was blown away. I probably said that about 3 or 4 times already in this video, but I really was with Hotline Miami. Hotline Miami is a game that was unlike anything else I've played up to this point. The trippy, psychedelic visuals, so colorful and vast, as well as the nice pixelated and gritty look to the characters and the environments. It was such a clash of style that I've never have seen really in any game like that until then. Also, the soundtrack was just fantastic. I mean, this was a game that had a soundtrack that was so good that I would listen to it long after I dropped the controller. You know, this was a soundtrack that I would, buy, and I would listen to it on my phone all the time, and, just various things. This was a fantastic game, not to mention the story just kept on giving. The story was very obtuse. It was not an obvious thing, and it really took a lot of attention to details. Kind of like, I guess you could say, a Dennis Leary or Quentin Tarantino movie. You know, there is a lot of things that you can see long after you've watched it, and it's a really cool experience to play this game. I'm really jealous of anybody that gets to play Hotline Miami for the first time. But I remember my first time, and it was great. My first time I got to actually fully experience after I got over the initial dislike of the game. Now, number 3 is quite possibly my favorite multiplayer game of all time, which is kind of weird to say because it's only a 2-player game. It's not any more than 2 players, and it's only cooperative. But this was a game that I just could not stop playing with my friends, and that was Orc Must Die 2. Orc Must Die 2, in my opinion, is the best tower defense game to ever exist. The graphics are excellent, as well as the sound design. I mean, the game had some excellent gameplay, and I really enjoy the mix of fast-paced action with hordes of enemies, all kinds of unique and inventive traps that you can place, as well as unique trinkets and items that you can use in order to enhance the gameplay. And the challenge would keep going up and up. You really would take a lot of time to get through this game. And you can level up your gear and your equipment and everything like that. Level up the traps. You can do all kinds of different things in Orcs Must Die 2. It even has some excellent Steam Workshop integration, so I highly recommend checking out Orcs Must Die 2. Number 2 on the list, it's gotta be Binding of Isaac Rebirth. Binding of Isaac Rebirth is a game that I have literally spent over 100 hours playing. This is a game that keeps on giving. In my eyes, this is the perfect roguelike game to play, because it just has such a unique and large variety of things to see. I've spawned hundreds of times in this game, and I feel like that I'm still missing quite a lot. As a matter of fact, I haven't even unlocked all the endings that this game has to offer. Not to mention, I haven't even unlocked all the characters. And there's several items and things like that that I have not seen. The gameplay is also very nostalgic for me, harkening back all the way to the original Legend of Zelda. I really enjoy the dungeon designs of this game, and they're just fantastic, as well as the grotesque, nostalgic art style that this game has. It also has a really deep and dark story that was just insane. It's not a story that you would ever expect to see in a video game, but it really pulls it off with all flying colors. Number 1 is easily the most played indie game that I've ever played. It was actually kind of hard to define it as an indie game because of the fact that it was originally published by a major publisher. However, I decided to label it as an indie game, just like I did with Hotline Miami, because that was published by Devolver Digital. So number 1 on the list is Mountain Blade Warband. This was a game that just surprised me. This was a game that I've always wanted to have as a kid. Basically, it is a medieval sandbox simulation game where you play as a knight or warrior or whatever, something like that. And you basically rise to power. You become a general in the king's army, or you could be a mercenary, or you can even become a ruler yourself. The possibilities are pretty much endless in Mountain Blade Warband. The sword combat was just fantastic. I mean, I really enjoyed pulling off the various combos and counters in the game, as well as being able to pick off enemies with archers, enjoying the huge, vast fights that oftentimes could include over 100 troops on the same screen, as well as castle sieges. You, of course, can hire NPCs and soldiers to help out. There is just so much to this game. I could literally talk about Mountain Blade Warband all day because this game has just so much to it. And that's, and on top of that, it's actually got an excellent multiplayer component as well. It supports up to 200 players, as well as a fantastic Napoleonic war mod. This game just has so much to offer, and that's why it's my favorite indie game of all time. So I wonder what your guys' list would look like with the top indie games ever to exist. I'd be really interested to see what you guys have to say in the comments. And I want to thank you very much for tuning into the Downphoenix show. Don't forget to check the links in the description for more ways to support the show. But till then, Downphoenix out.